Hey everyone, this is Mason and you're listening to Herb Rally. Today's episode is another edition of the Herbalist Hour. This time I'm joined by Mimi Hernandez. So Mimi recently wrote a beautiful book. It's called National Geographic Herbal, 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. Recently got it in the mail and I'm absolutely loving it so far. And in this conversation, we chat a lot about the book, her abuelitas, the American Herbalists Guild, kudzu, her writing process, and a ton more. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Mimi, and I know you're going to love it as well. And Mimi is actually one of the keynote speakers, along with Seven Song, at the upcoming Florida Herbal Conference. That's held in Lake Wales, Florida, and that's March 1st to the 3rd. It's also a virtual event, so if you can't make it to Florida, definitely check out their online virtual offerings as well. Last year, I was actually able to watch the keynote with Patricia Critzy Howell. It was awesome. I was able to do that virtually, so you could do the same thing this time around. So again, that's March 1st to the 3rd, 2024 in Lake Wales, Florida, or virtually as well. So it's 3 days of herbalism classes, plant walks, musical performances. Those are always a great time at the Florida Herbal Conference. And there's lots of great food as well. If you'd like to learn more and register, simply go to floridaherbalconference.org. Again, that's floridaherbalconference.org. And I will leave a link for you at the tippy top of today's podcast show notes. And I can't forget to mention, if you use coupon code HERBRALLY when you're registering for the Florida Herbal Conference, whether that's in person or virtual, you'll save 20% off. So again, that's coupon code HERBRALLY at checkout to save 20% on your registration. Also, before we get into the show, I'd love to thank our presenting sponsor, and that is Oshala Farm. If you're looking to purchase beautiful, vibrant, U.S.-grown organic herbs, look no further than Oshala Farm at oshalafarm.com. I have known Elise and Jeff Higley for many years. They're the owners of Oshala Farm, so I highly trust their business practices and growing methods. One more time, to learn more about Oshala Farm, you could go to oshalafarm.com and check out their wide variety of medicinal, culinary, dried herbs that they grow right there on their beautiful Southern Oregon farm. They also have lots of other elixirs and tea blends, hydrosols, you name it. So thanks to Oshala Farm for being our presenting sponsor of the Herbalist Hour. Also, I got to shout out our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. Thanks y'all so much for your support. We really could not do this without you. And one of the perks of being a member is you get to join us live for these Herbalist Hour interviews, at least the ones held on Zoom like this one was with Mimi. If you'd like to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, simply go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse and don't forget to use coupon code podcast at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. That's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for listening to the Herbalist Hour, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today, I'm really excited to have on Mimi Hernandez. Welcome to the show, Mimi.
Hi, Mason. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a big fan of your work and your podcasts.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. You just came out with a beautiful new book. It's called the National Geographic Herbal, 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions by Mimi Hernandez. So you got your copy as well. Good. You came prepared. We're going to be talking a lot about that book today, the writing process and so on. So I'm excited to hear more about that. But I'd like to start at the beginning, as we do in a lot of these shows, these episodes. Tell us about your abuelita.
Oh, well, I have, as many of us do, I have two abuelitas. And the one of them I speak of frequently because of her inspiration on my herbalism. But in fact, both of my abuelitas had a profound influence. And, I'm there. My one abuelita is from Mexico City, and my other abuelita is from Bogota, Colombia. And both of them have a history of using herbs, and they never called themselves an herbalist, but I spent more time with my abuelita in Mexico City, who clearly was a barrio herbalist. So she lived in the city, and just tended to neighbors and kids and grandchildren, and people would just knock on her door when they needed something. And so I was there for that, kind of just hanging on her apron strings, watching, like a fly on the wall. I didn't know what I was witnessing at the time, but later in life, as I started to process, I'm like, hey, she was very herby.
Totally. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
actually one of my goals as being a dad is I'm hoping that my daughter is raised in such a way where herbs are just kind of based on her lifestyle. It's she doesn't really consider herself an herbalist, and it sounds like your grandparents, your grandmas were kind of similar in that way. Not necessarily calling themselves herbalists or the way that you and I kind of interact in the world, but yeah, that's so cool. So I was curious. What kind of influence did your Colombian abuelita have on you? Is there any like rich Colombian herbal tradition that she also kind of you carry forth to this day? Because I know
Well,
I
that
know
was
about the Mexican hot chocolate from the other one. So
well, and yeah, well, she passed away when I was really young. I was probably like
okay.
7 or 8 years old. But there is one thing, it's very similar to the Mexican hot chocolate story, but she had, and it's not really a Colombian recipe, but she used to make this face cream,
Hmm.
and it was like this glistening, glittery face cream. And come to find out, it was like mother of pearl. And it
Oh,
had this aroma that I always thought of my grandma when I smelled that. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that aroma was helichrysum, which we all
wow.
know is, really great for the skin. So she was making this cream, and, mother of pearl supposedly is also, popular in skin products. And so I just remember her just always having like this shiny, pearly complexion, and just smelling kind of, helichrysum, it smells good. And then it's like a tint toward that medicinal type of smell. But yeah, and then in Colombia, we also make hot chocolate, but we put cheese in it.
Wow.
So that's something that's just like very specifically Colombian, just like little chunks of cheese, and they get melty and gooey at the bottom. So also just, I feel a strong lineage toward, I'm very close to my Colombian side of my family, and I just have a strong sense of like Amazonian and South American healing practices. We have some roots there that I won't go into, but
Sure.
there's definitely some tribal roots that I have explored, and I'm just really it's just such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And being here in Wisconsin now, I'm gonna have to try some cheese curds in our hot chocolate. And Amanda's all about that. She loves chocolate, she loves cheese, so
Cheese
that's
curds
great
would be
news.
perfect. Yeah, if you like melted cheese and hot chocolate, then yes.
Awesome. Well, knowing a little bit about your background, you study with Dr. Duke. Um, I would love if you could just share any experience learning from him or any fun stories about Dr. Duke. He just seems like such a fascinating
Uh,
guy. I never had the
so
chance to
fun.
meet him. Yeah.
Oh, he was so full of energy and so much fun. And he would just spit and spit like phytochemical language all over the place. And then he'd like pick up his fiddle and just start like singing little ditties about ginseng and herbs. But I was first drawn to him, ironically, because of his work in Colombia.
Oh,
And, I grew up in America, and as a child, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to travel to Colombia. But I was fascinated by his work. And so, in a way, he provided, it's interesting because, of course, he was a white elder, but he did like kind of create a bridge for me to my own kind of lost tradition in some ways, with his work in the Amazon. And he did a lot of work like cataloging botanicals in Colombia, and spent a lot of time with tribes there. And so that was what first really got me interested in his work, was his work as a young ethnobotanist. And then as I kept following his work, he came out with the book, The Green Pharmacy. And that was just my little, that was before the internet. And I was just like all about that book. I had it all marked up, and it was translated in Spanish. So I got to share it with my aunties and my mom. And we all like were there comparing notes. And So yeah, I was just mostly started off kind of like a groupie, just reading everything I could get my hands on about him. And at some point, I had actually at my first AHG conference, I found out that he was going to be teaching at this graduate school in Maryland called Thai Sophia at the time. And I was like, went home and told my husband at the time, I'm like, let's pack up our bags. We are moving to another state because I'm going to get my graduate degree and follow this man. And so, yeah, I ended up working a lot in his garden as a volunteer. And yeah, he had this outdoor kind of kitchen where he would make kind of the daily soup of the day, which is always vegetarian, but always very rich with herbs and beans. And so every time we went to volunteer at his garden, he had like a warm bowl of soup for us. And just, I just loved him. He really took me under his wing, and we did sing on stage together several times
Wow.
at various herb conferences. And that was probably my most special memories with him, is like singing with him. So that was just warms my heart.
Yeah, doesn't he have an album of herb songs? I know Doug Elliott's got a lot of that stuff.
It's called Herb Album or
Oh,
Herbal.
right. Herbal
However,
Bum. Yeah, that's
Herbal
that's right.
Balm, Herb
That's what I'm talking.
Album. Yeah.
Have you ever seen him sing with Doug Elliott too? Is that a thing?
I want to say I have, because
Yeah.
I know we've been at events together. He used to travel to this event in North Carolina called Wild Herb Weekend.
Yeah.
And
I've been there.
It's live not too far from me. They're just right down the road. I think we're like, if not in the next county, right in the same county here. So, I've like encountered them so many times, but yeah, it's right up that alley. Just like they share that similar like entertainer type of type of vibe.
I love Doug. So Thai Sophia, you got a couple abuelitas. Does your mother consider herself an herbalist as well?
She really didn't at the time. My mother, intriguingly, was a carpenter
Oh,
for General Motors for over 40 years. So she
wow.
was really like, a career woman, a skilled tradeswoman. But she did instill a lot of that like pragmatic, like self-care attitude, like learn to take care of your needs, learn to tend to yourself. And I think, in some, because we all have somewhat of a mindset. Well, Latin Americans, when they come here, there's an interest in Americanizing, and there's an interest in like maybe not speaking Spanish in the household. So everyone starts speaking English, and everyone starts doing like, conventional medicine and to fit in more.
Sure.
And so I think that was, a part of that generational, trying to fit in. But my mom has been so, so interested in my work.
Mhm.
And now she's like an avid gardener. She has her herbal teas that she drinks all the time. She's just, yeah, she's a force of nature in and of herself, and, super supportive. But there's something to be said when you bring your kid to America and you raise them to be a scientist or engineer or a doctor, and that kid's like, Mom, guess what? I'm going to be an herbalist instead.
Yeah.
And so that took, I think, several years to like overcome. Like, yeah.
You are a scientist in a lot of ways, though.
Yeah.
Same
I
time.
did. Yeah, I studied biology and chemistry in college, and definitely came from a scientific brain, growing up, and many ways that's what drew me more into studying herbalism.
Well, and she must be proud. You're the author of a book, so I'd love to get into it. Again, that's the National Geographic Herbal 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. First of all, it looks like Dr. Tiona Lodog did the foreword for you, which is incredible. She was on the Herbalist Hour 20 episodes back or so, I want to say. And I'm just kind of curious what your relationship with Tiona is like. I know she's worked a lot with National Geographic over the years. Is that kind of how she ended up doing the foreword, or have you ever, like, say, hung out or studied with her or anything like that?
I have, obviously like followed her work, and she's been a keynote lecturer for the HG where I work. I've been just mesmerized by her knowledge and her wisdom, and also just her attention to herbal narratives and storytelling and, upholding traditions alongside being a kick-ass doctor and regulatory consultant and all this. Like, she's so empowered on our behalf,
Totally.
and but I had, aside from those, I hadn't spent a lot of time with her, aside from like citing her writing in my papers and things like that. So it was a huge, like, humbling experience to learn that she was standing behind my work and writing the foreword. And then in that, there's definitely been a sense of her um a little bit taking me under her wing, kind of passing the torch, if you will, um, you know, including me in conversations where, you know, she thinks I would fit in. And so it's been like really great. And we have an event that we're both keynoting together coming this spring at the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference. And so I'm so looking forward to hanging out with her in that more like relaxed, kind of campy environment, and like share some meals with her and some walks. And I'm like really excited.
That's amazing. So I know you're doing a keynote there along with the Florida Herbal Conference. Do you know what your topic is going to be for the keynote yet? Just out of curiosity.
Well, at the Midwest Women's Conference, the keynote is going to be the 9 herbs. It's a journey through the National Geographic
That's
Herbal,
awesome.
where I've selected one herb from each chapter, and really diving into it. It's a little bit of a photographic journey, and I'm keynoting the Florida Herb Conference, I think, alongside Seven Song, who
That's right.
also and he and I are still kind of putting our heads together about what we're going to talk about. But I think it's going to be something in the way of like what we've learned in the past 20 years. There's some kind of reflection on, our journeys through herbalism, and I think like he and I are very compatible because we have come from different perspectives, and so it's not going to be, it won't overlap. It'll just kind of enhance each other's presentations.
That sounds incredible. I don't think I'll be able to make it this year. I have been to the Florida conference. I love that event. Have you been before?
I haven't, and
Oh, you're gonna love it.
so excited because I heard it's so casual and like relaxed. And one thing I have to say is that I love going to conferences where I'm not an organizer, because
Yeah,
I've
totally.
organized the American Herbalists Guild Symposium as a director for like 13 years
Wow.
now. And so it's like so refreshing to walk into an event and just be like, hi, I'm
Right.
here. I don't have to like be stressed about everything. So I'm really looking forward to just having a nice time and soaking up some rays and being in nature and just sharing with people.
I could so relate to you. I mean, doing Mount Rose Herbs events for 11 years, it's such a good feeling to attend an event that you haven't had to organize yourself. So, all right.
Mhm.
So going back to Tirona, I want to read a little clip from her foreword, if you don't mind. So bear with me here. So she wrote this beautiful foreword, and this is kind of near the end of it. And Tirona says, I was unprepared for the beauty of Mimi's writing. She skillfully brings the plants to life, referring to them as if they were dear friends and detailing where each plant is found, how it grows, its unique history, and how it is used medicinally. Mimi also honors the rich herbal traditions of the world and gives voice to the gifts of scientific knowledge. The accompanying photography is breathtaking. I know this book will delight many, from the casually curious to the most experienced herbalist. And I kind of want to highlight that last part. Um, uh, do you think that this is one of, say, like the best things about writing this book with National Geographic is its ability through their publication to kind of influence and inspire those that are, say, herb curious or on the fringe of herbalism, and just really kind of get them more into herbalism and welcome them into our world.
So look, it's definitely, I acknowledged early on that this book was going to be in the public eye, like beyond herbal communities
Right.
and libraries, schools, things like that. And so one of the things that I wanted to be sure to portray is the herbalist perspective,
Yeah.
because you see a lot of like kind of reference books out there and they never mention an herbalist ever. And even with National Geographic, they might mention like indigenous herbalists or herbalists in the jungle or something. But so in this book, like one of my main ethos was to convey how an herbalist sees and works with these herbs, whether it's through sensory, energetics, clinical applications, research-based, kitchen herbalists, wildcrafting herbalists, gardening herbalists. So I really wanted people to get the sense that herbalists are out there. And so that was really important to me. So almost every plant has some information about how an herbalist would work with this. Instead of just being plant centric and here's what it does and here's what, the research says, I really wanted to bring in how we work with it so that people could get a sense of those of us who are actually hands-on with the plants and know these plants intimately. And so, I wanted to be sure that that was, part of, and then also our concerns as herbal community and as herbalists, like, I wanted to portray those like, sustainability and ethics and wildcrafting and issues with global, the global commerce and issues with the loss of traditions. And so, I wanted to make sure that all of these were also at the forefront, even, in some case, like in California poppy or some of the more herbs that are native to America, just really kind of instilling that idea that these aren't for all of us always, that we want to have that respect for the land and respect for the communities who rely on these herbs. And so, those kind of things might be eye-opening for people in the public who have never really considered the intricacies of working with herbs.
I saw you gave a nice shout out to United Plant Savers in the book as well. Going through the book, I just absolutely love how you laid it out, and you kind of alluded to it when you were talking about the keynote at the Florida conference. You've got different categories: sensory herbalism, kitchen herbalism, apothecary herbalism, topical herbalism, garden herbalism, weedy herbalism, woodland herbalism, community herbalism, which starts with cannabis, and then and then global herbalism, as you were just talking about as well. And I just thought that was so fun and such a unique and fun way to organize the book. I'm kind of curious, did you come up with those different categories? Were you working with National Geographic to do that? And kind of what was your process to creating the different categories in the book?
So that is based on a class syllabus that I taught many years ago. And it was basically a journey through, it was a community herbalist course that I used to teach. And it was basically a journey from like the micro to the macro, where we start with like, how do herbs taste? How do they feel? How do they smell? How do they look? Like doctrine of signatures, things like that. Because that's always got to be the place where we start.
Yeah.
And then, the kitchen, which is where, the heart of herbalism for many people. And then just stepping outside your back door to your garden, and that brings up the weeds and then we take a walk into the woods and really like experience a healthy habitat. I want to, and I use, my habitat here at Appalachia foothills to like take a snapshot of that, if you will. And then kind of expanding to how herbalism functions in the community, but then even globally. So, it really just kind of pans out from like the very personal experience to the global experience. And so that's why I just felt like it became a journey to write it. And And then along the way, being able to punctuate, different issues, with each of those, and then highlight traditions throughout. So, I wanted to make sure we did some of that too.
Yeah, I really liked flipping through the weedy herbalism section and seeing like dandelion in there and essentially like glorifying all these plants that you and I love so much. And that's another one of my hopes for this book, since this is going to be so widely distributed, get some of like the normies start
Good.
falling in love with these weedy plants such as dandelion and stop vilifying it so much.
But yeah, back to your question, I wanted to make sure I do
Sure.
talk about my editor, Susan Hitchcock, who's a senior editor with National Geographic. And it did take some time to settle on an organization
Mm.
for the book. And I have come out of this experience with a real ally and a great friend in Susan. Like, we synergize so well together. She's been so supportive. We bounce ideas off each other. We really curated the concept together. And then there's another really brilliant herbalist you may or may not know, and her name is Heather Woods Buzzard. And she's a local herbalist in Asheville, a very gifted writer. She's writing a huge book on narrative herbalism. She has a degree in narrative medicine. And she was like a coach to me, like a writing coach, and kind of kept me on task and on time,
Yeah.
and helped like peer review the work. And I mean, I could not have done this without the two of them, because I writing was a challenge for me. It really had to find the time, find the ritual, find this, I've always been a speaker. I've always lectured and told stories. And this was like a way to take like all that, like what I consider like all these thoughts about an herb or a healing tradition that are like this big cloud of cotton in your head, and you're just like spinning them into like a fine, like a linear thread. And that process is like mind blowing to me. And it's just, I still haven't realized that I've accomplished that. It still hasn't really hit me.
Quite the feat. Yeah, no, I could only imagine. I do want to talk more about the process, but you mentioned narrative herbalism, and I've never heard that phrase before. Can you tell us what that is?
Right. It's like honoring the stories and telling the stories of herbalism, the stories of the plants and the traditions. Ironically, Tirona Low Dog did a seminar on narrative herbalism.
Hmm.
I wasn't able to attend because it was, more or less around the pandemic time, so I couldn't travel. But yeah, it's kind of a fascinating, subject. And the American Herbalists Guild did a symposium based on narrative herbalism a few
Oh,
years back, and it was just enchanting. It's just like storytelling about herbs.
yeah, we need more of that. That's definitely one of my favorites as well. Well, you were talking about a couple of your collaborators. I'd love to hear about more about the photography
Mhm.
process, because also, as Tirona mentioned in the foreword, the photography and the graphics are all just absolutely beautiful. And maybe I'll ask Amanda to splice in some video or photos of it here in the interview. But can you tell us where the photos came from and all that?
Sure. So that I would credit this beautiful artist named Uliana Bazar. And Uliana is the one who held the vision for the design of the book and the aesthetic of the book. And she was also the one who gathered all the photography. So a lot of photography was, in the National Geographic archives. A lot of it was like Stephen Foster photography. And then we also went to, various places like Juliet Blankensparrow, and the Herbal Academy has beautiful repertoire photography. And so it really just came from all over the place.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I'm really happy in that one of the pictures in the book I took.
Oh,
So,
nice. Which one's
and
that?
it's in the capsaicin, the chili
Okay.
pepper chapter in the kitchen. Actually, it's in the sensory section. And in the sidebar, because there's like a little sidebar where I do like fun facts or little recipes or little interest items. And in that section, I did talked about Colombian ají, which is kind of like hot sauce. It's like a hot vinegar salsa type of recipe that every Colombian has a recipe for. And when they first came up with the spread, I saw all they had was just a chili pepper in that section. I was like, no, it has to be ají. And so then they put another photo in there and it just looked like salsa. And ají doesn't look like salsa. So
Okay.
almost before we wrapped it up, I was like, please, it has to be in there for the sake of my family. And Uliana gave me the aesthetic guidelines and gave me some tips. And I had to wait for the right lighting outside, old rustic picnic table. And so they put my picture of ají in there, credited me, everything. So, but yeah, there was a lot of back and forth with the photography. I had a lot of vision also that, they really took my input seriously about being more, reflecting diversity and, proper identification of plants is really
Crucial.
important. So, yeah.
And hopefully they capitalize the genus and lowercase the species in here. I didn't check for that, but I've seen that mistake quite a
They
bit.
did.
Okay, italicized, yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have found a small error or two.
It happens.
That's
It'll
bonus for, yeah, I sat at a panel for other herbal authors at the last HG conference, and it was like so relieving to hear that other authors have also found little typos and things. So,
I see it all the time. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what the second run is for, correct
Right,
all those
right, right.
mistakes exactly,
Yeah,
which
but
I'm
I
sure this
forget.
will get a second run as well. Well, I would like to hear more about the writing process. I was actually originally going to ask this, but talking about it now, I'm kind of curious. How long did it take for the entire process to happen?
The entire process took about, okay, so 3 years
Oh,
from,
wow.
from conception to completion
Amazing.
to publication. So this is how I spent my stay-at-home quarantine. I
Yeah.
basically just hunkered down. The timing kind of lined up that I moved out to this homestead and purchased my first home, and it's like out here in the country. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna hunker down and write. And um, I had to miss a lot of events. I'm a very social person. I'm very active in the music scene, and I've got a whole other music community. And I had to start saying no to a lot, a lot. And to this day, I look at these books, I'm like, this is why I've missed so many shows. Um, and so many travel journeys, and but it's worth it.
You're back in the music scene now, yeah, I suppose.
Well, there's might be other books on their way.
All right, foreshadowing. I was gonna ask you about that near the end. So awesome. I'd love to hear about it. So I heard Ji Ling mention in her one of her recent podcasts that you wrote a lot of the book. I said in the chicken coop, but she corrected me. It was near the chicken coop. Can you tell us more about like your habits, your rituals for the writing process?
It is funny because I definitely like when I look at the book or think about the plants, I remember where I was when I wrote those. Like I was in a
Mm.
cafe in Colorado when I wrote the sunflower section. I was on an airplane on my way to somewhere when I wrote plantain. But yes, I spent a lot of time writing with the chickens. Like there's a picnic table out there and the chickens were young and we didn't have them fenced in very much yet. So I would let them out to roam freely for a while, but I felt like I wanted to be out there to keep an eye on things. So I would just make myself comfortable and just like, it was right after like my 9 to 5 work day. And so I'd go out there for a good, couple hours and just sit and write, while the chickens were jumping on the picnic table and just walking around me.
I don't suppose the chickens made it in the acknowledgement section.
Ah,
I didn't check.
they should have. They should
Uh,
have.
Sorry, bad joke. Jiling also actually submitted a guest question. Speaking of Jiling Lin, so shout out Jiling Lin. She's a friend of
Hey,
Herbalist. She's been
Julie.
on the show. She was actually episode 1 of the Herbalist Hour. You can learn more about her at jilinglin.com. But it's actually kind of a multi-part question. So Jiling
Okay.
Jiling asks, I would love to hear what her favorite herbs for bringing on travels are, especially international travels or longer distance trips. Which herbs were especially helpful during the writing process, and how she gets to know new plants in new places. So there's quite a bit there, but feel free to take that however you want.
Great, great. I love those questions. Well, probably the herb that I've allied most since writing has been calamus, and I
Wow.
have like my calamus tincture here. Like I it's part of my writing ritual. I need to start like dosing on calamus just to clear my brain fog and get me centered on one topic, close all the other windows and just focus. It's been amazing. And so I do travel with it because often I travel also to teach and do conferences and things or be at face-to-face meetings. I'm like, oh, I need words. So calamus. So I always have my calamus with me. I went to the International Herb Symposium and forgot my calamus. And so then I started looking for Jim McDonald. I'm like,
Yeah,
gotta have some.
which he
And
did.
he did right in his pocket. He's like, here you go. I'm like, thank
He
you.
pulls that out of his mouth and gives it to you.
I'm like, thank you, because I have a class coming up and I need to make words. And that's really helped me. I have a touch of aphasia, a history of aphasia, and so sometimes words don't come to me. Like I'm just like,
Mm,
and the calamus has really helped me with that personally. And so yeah, it's been great. But I also travel, I like to travel with Shasandra
yeah.
because I get run down when I travel a lot. Like I am no Bevan Claire, right? I love traveling, but I
Right,
can
right.
imagine like being like always on the go. My body gets run down easily, so I like to take Shasandra to keep me level and you know, immune support and all that. So those would be my two biggest travel buddies. And
Yeah,
then what was the rest of the question?
now I have to reread it because I'm forgetting too. And yeah, I gotta say, Calamus, Shasandra, definitely allies for me as well.
So
Um,
traveling, how do I discover
oh
plants
yeah,
when
that's
I
what it is.
travel? I really like to go and find herbalists to like
Oh
walk
yeah.
with. Of course, I love botanical gardens and things like that, and just going for walks in the wilderness. But I really like getting guided. You know, I'd
Totally.
like to find like the local plant person or another thing I like to do is this, especially in Latin America, is go when I'm anywhere in Latin America, I like to go straight to like the city market.
Mm,
And usually those are big, giant open air markets and find the herb person
yeah.
because there's always some herbal vendors there and, you know, they're like treating people right on the spot and they've got all kinds of different herbs. And if you can gain their trust, you know, they really start talking a lot and sharing wisdom.
Those are great tips. Yeah, I have to say, almost anytime I go to a different state or city, I hang out with at least one herbalist. So, and I'm sure you, Mimi, know herbalists in probably almost every state at this point. So, awesome. Well, do you have any advice for those herbalists out there looking to create a book at some point?
Ooh. Or well, I think I would you know, envision it clearly. Like, you know, I'm not saying flush out a complete outline, but you know, I do a lot of, you know, just like new moon vision quests where, you know, I picture myself with a book and I picture my book like reaching people and I don't know, like I think that's part of planting the seed is to envision and then find a niche. Like what exactly, like what space do you hold?
Mm,
Like
yep.
maybe you're not going to write a whole like herbal, but maybe, you know, I had thought about writing about, you know, sacred Latin American herbs, for instance, because I have like a real love for them. But you know, I think every herbalist has a very, very specific niche that remains unfilled. So,
Yes.
you know, they like find that niche.
I think that's some of the best advice for real. And yeah, I mean, that's goes with anything you want to do in herbalism is find what niche you have to offer. You know, like Herb Rally is all about promoting herbalists and events and stuff like that. Like I'm not a clinical herbalist. Not everyone has to be doing the same thing. So that's really great advice. So you brought this up earlier. As far as potentially writing another book in the future. Is that what you might do next? Is the sacred South American herbs?
No, that one's still somewhere in my heart, but
Yeah.
it's not, that one I'm still visioning.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what's your next book then? Okay,
So
so
I'm
you're
not
you're
sure.
you're just gonna take a break for a bit.
Yeah, well, no, I'm actually pumping some new deadlines here. I'm
Oh,
almost wrapped up the next one, and I'm not really sure I'm at liberty to say yet, but
oh,
it
right.
is yeah. So it is a collaboration with my good friend Heather Wood Buzzard, and
Oh,
this
right.
time co-authoring together. And yeah, I'm sure you'll hear something about it soon. But my dream is a cookbook. That's where my heart is. My heart is in the kitchen.
Totally.
I'm always cooking, sharing recipes, being creative in the kitchen. So my dream beyond the Latin American sacred herbs would be to do a cookbook. Like that's kind of a real goal of mine eventually. So hopefully, someday that'll happen.
I will buy that cookbook the second it comes out. Like you got to do that. I would love that. And we need more like herbalists writing these cookbooks because I love learning about different, traditions and what people do in their kitchens and whatnot. Because I'm an avid cook myself. And when you do that, we'll have you back on the show and we'll talk all about it. So,
Super.
um, yeah. So, we're 40 minutes into the episode and I haven't even really mentioned this. You have a couple times. You've been the executive director for the American Herbalists Guild for what'd you say, about 12 years now?
11 years, and I've been working on symposium for about 14
Oh,
years.
wow.
So um yeah, I actually just accomplished 11 years January 1st. And I am now stepping away from that. So, some
Wow.
people have already heard, but I'm like, just it, the HG belongs to the community. There's a lot of real passionate people involved, a real uh, cohesive board of directors that's really engaged. We have a really nice staff, and I just feel like it's ready for some new energy. And we're in new times, and I'm ready to kind of pass it back to the community and see what happens. See what the next level is for the HG.
I'm really excited for you, and I'll save my what's next for Mimi question for the end because I don't want to make it sound like we're wrapping up here. But I'm just curious, since you've worked with American Herbalist Guild for so long, do you have any advice for those wanting to become a registered herbalist with the AHG? Like if they're just getting going?
I think the best thing to do is to work with a mentor,
Mm,
and to really start to see clients,
totally.
and get that face-to-face experience with clients, document, and if you have great clients, if you have some really great case, go ahead and write it up so that you start to build a file of case studies. For the RH application, you need 3 really nice case studies with follow-ups. And even those of us with the most robust practices, those cases are gems, where you really get to follow up with people 3, 4, 5 times and see progress. And so if you ever find yourself as an herbalist with that experience behind you, go ahead and start writing it up. That way you can, that'll really make things easier when time comes to sit down and apply.
Great advice. Well, did you want to talk about any of the plants inside of the book? Anything jumping out at you or um
I don't know. What should we talk about, Mason?
yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm always like wanting to talk dandelion or whatever. But we talk about dandelion on the show too much. Let's go with something else. How about kudzu?
Oh,
I'd love
yeah.
to hear more about
I
that.
Yeah, kudzu. Like
Or kudzu.
I live in Kudzu County over
Yeah.
here, in the foothills of Appalachia in the southeast. And so we have just sometimes some places where there's kudzu in the summer as far as the eye can see. And it's really concerning. It's concerning to watch it, eat up the South, if you will, which is the old saying there. But It's also beautiful in a way because it is quite medicinal. It was, came to us from Asia, back in the day when people thought you could like plant it to prevent erosion and feed the goats and livestock. And, apparently the American government paid farmers to plant it for these reasons. And then very quickly they realized it was a noxious invasive weed, and it's just, you see it like taking over trees and fields and houses and cars. It's just, it's insane.
Yeah.
But it's really packed with genistein and diazine, these kind of phytoestrogenic compounds that, can be supportive for cancer prevention. And those, it's the roots that are primarily used, but the leaves are also edible if you can get them young when they're not so fibrous. And the flowers are so phenomenal. They're so pretty. They're like kind of the color of this pink in my dress, and purple, and they just smell like grape jelly. And so they're fun to work with because you can do like infused vinegars and really bright colored like desserts and crystallized flowers and things like this. But it's also really great medicine. And in Chinese medicine, it's used a lot in other Asian modalities for anything from like menopause, migraine headaches. There's research on these, heart health and cardiovascular health, but also, this interesting aspect of kudzu and research is its use to prevent alcohol consumption, which is really interesting. And yeah, so it's basically, in a nutshell, you get a bunch of dorm room, you get a dorm room full of college students who are heavy drinkers, and you fill the fridge with booze, and you give half of the room kudzu capsules and half of the room not. And I guess, the trend there is that the students who took the kudzu drank a lot less,
That is so crazy.
but they got buzzed a little faster. So, it's like maybe it's just processing faster or something, that's just my understanding of it. But it's cool. And you'll see kudzu in products for like hangovers and alcohol prevention and things like that. So
That's
just
fascinating.
really curious. Yeah.
You also talk about personal growth through gardening. I thought that was a really cool segment. Could you talk a little bit about that? Why is there personal growth when you become a gardener?
That was a really timely piece that was written about the same time I was really personally flourishing as a gardener,
Hmm.
because I've always, I've never had property, I've never had land, to put down those kind of seeds or roots. I've always been like a renter, and, so I got really good like container gardening.
Right.
But when I came here to the Ponderland, which is where I live now, yeah, my husband and I just started putting in garden beds, and we kind of just went crazy with it. And we've done a great job at it. It's really been a whole different dynamic in my life. It's like added a whole different dimension to my life. Gardening from seed, from the soil building to picking bugs off of plants to just like getting to know plants through the seasons and the harvest season. And now I'm really practicing winter gardening.
Hmm.
And then native plant propagation, and I've got strawberry beds, and just I've got a spiral herb garden, and it's just like really taken off. And it's what I love doing. I used to, when I lived in Asheville, really my nightly routine was to go to the bar and hang out with my friends. Not that I would get drunk or anything, but
Right.
that was like that was just all there was to do. We go and like hang out and catch up on our day. We had like our little watering hole. And now it's like my whole life has changed because I'm outside all the time. My hands are dirty. It's just, it's sometimes a lot and sometimes it's just perfect. So we're trying to find that balance.
when I interviewed Jeff Carpenter, we had a little talk about how I told him I feel like herb farmers are some of the most healthy, vibrant people that you see. There's always like this glow to them, and I'm really excited for our family. We've got a little point 0.1 acre yard here in Appleton, Wisconsin, and Amanda's kind of spearheaded the whole gardening thing. It's actually kind of embarrassing. You know, I've been in the herbalism game for so long. But anytime someone say, "Oh, do you have a garden?" I'd always have to like be like, "No." It was never really like one of my things, but I'm really excited to start experiencing some personal growth through gardening. And I just got to say, preparing for this interview, I was so excited to chat with you because just flipping through the book, there's just so many amazing segments, and there's just so much information about the herbs, and I can't wait to delve in further. But we're not wrapping up yet, Mimi. I still got a few more questions for you. I've always been curious, what's the significance of your, I don't know if it's your actual middle name, but what's your relationship with Prunella?
Oh, Prunella. Yep, it's my middle name.
Like your actual legal middle name?
And
Awesome.
it is ironic because uh I didn't know the plant prunella until I was a grown up. So yeah, and then the fact that it's called self-heal,
Yeah.
and so now I've really over the years developed a relationship with the plant prunella vulgaris, which grows as a common weed here, and it's just such a beautiful plant, but it's both symbolizing that self-healing nature, and but also I think underutilized because it's such like a potent, antiviral and tonic for, like the tissues and topical, benefits. So it's like really humble and quiet, but it's impressive.
I love that. Isn't it also known as Heal All? Is that another one of the common
Right?
names I want to say? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's sweet. I kind of thought maybe that was one of your like herbalist alter ego names or something like that. That's neat to find out that it's actually your middle name.
Yeah.
Um, Sweet. Well, thanks for sharing all that. Let's kind of wrap up. What's next for Mimi?
Ooh.
A lot.
Well, I'm paying a lot of attention to what we call the Ponderland, which is the sanctuary that we're building here in the foothills. We've got about 4 acres of land, so it's just enough for my husband and I to curate or to steward, I should say. It's a phenomenal piece of the country. It's in an isothermal kind of weather bubble, so it doesn't get too cold or too hot. So the growing season's amazing. But what's really astounding me is the amount of native plants in the woods here. We have woods, we have field, and we have pond and like kind of water, like a floodplain. So we have just a combination of height because there's the ridge and then there's the bottomlands and the creek. And so there's such amazing diversity here. And, we didn't know it when we moved in because I bought the house in like November, and, the plants were to bed by then. And so it wasn't until like the spring started emerging that I'm like, oh my gosh,
That's the best.
we've got Black Cohosh Cove, and we've got a Golden Seal Island, and
Wow.
we've got just all these amazing plants. And I'm kid you not, every time I go for a walk I learn new plants. And I've cataloged at this point in my inventory about 120 native plants so far that I've identified, and still going strong. And so I'm putting a lot of attention on that work. We just got accepted as a United Plant Savers Botanical Sanctuary member. And so I'd like to have some way of bringing people here for education and plant walks. And, I'm not quite ready for that yet because I need to maybe build like a pavilion or
Right.
something where people can gather safely. But that's really on the forefront of my mind is stewarding this land, and we're working on like pond edge recovery. We've got a pond here too, and starting to work on some of the meadow, even like just start with small patches of meadow plants. And so, I'm just really lucky that my husband is on board. He's like a Eagle Scout back. He's just all out there, getting his hands dirty too. So it's something that we both are passionate about. And, that's, and then, on the same note, the invasives, always keeping up with those. And that's been really rewarding to watch. It's a lot of work, but that is where my heart is for sure.
You mentioned the pond. Are you going to be growing calamus?
I would like to. Right now, we're having a little bit of a cattail problem.
Ah,
And even though they're native cattails, they want to kind of claim the entire pond.
right.
So, aside from learning about cattail and all of its amazing uses, from the root to the shoots to the stems to the pollen, that's kind of a fun experiment. But we're also going to be trying to keep that in check so that we can kind of get back to the pond edge recovery. So yeah, need to just be real cautious that even invasive plants can just stake the whole territory. So
Yeah,
even native plants can stake the whole territory. So but I would love to grow calamus.
for
I
sure.
love, even if it was like in, I know some people grow it in like tubs, or,
Yep.
they have like more like some aquaponic type of situations. So yeah.
Do you think you'll host events on your land at
I
some
would
point?
love to host like small community events. And,
Yeah.
I'm an hour out of Asheville, which is a huge herbalist hub.
Yep.
But I'm in this county, I'm just starting to get feelers as to like people who are really interested in plants. I live in horse country. There's a lot of like equestrian folks around here with interest in nature and interest in native plants. So I'm kind of just community building on a smaller scale here in the county. And I would love to host like maybe some, you know, like some garden tours or things like that. We a few of us started a new group of Polk County plant lovers, and it's not thriving, but it's slowly, growing interest. And I would love to work with that community to do like a little bit of a county garden tour for a variety of people who are active in that group.
It's so fun to join a new community and start putting your feelers out there and start building community and everything. I'm kind of in the same process right now. So sweet. Well, where would you like to send folks? I don't know if this is a new website for you or not, but mimiprunellahernandez.com. I want to say it's a beautiful website. Anywhere else you'd like to send folks?
Yeah, just on Instagram, I'm relatively new, but I just crossed that 2000 mark.
Yeah.
Um, and still learning.
Yeah.
But I would love to, as the season warms back up, I'll be posting a lot of like plant centric work
Yep.
on my Instagram, which is Mimi Prunella Hernandez. And then my Facebook, there's a page there. It's Mimi Prunella Herbal, which, I'm going to share a lot of excerpts about the books and about, my work with herbs.
Awesome. Well, any closing thoughts before we wrap up and get out of here?
I don't think so. I'm just really, really grateful to be here. I'm super stoked to be here. So thank you for
Super.
having me. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I look forward to hearing from your listeners and
Absolutely.
uh, checking this out and sharing it to our communities.
Give Mimi a DM on her Instagram and follow her as well. Get her up to that 3,000 mark. Please, dear listener, go purchase the book wherever you can. All the above, your local bookstore if you can. But
Oh,
sweet.
and the
Well,
magazine
oh, and
too.
yeah, share the magazine, will you?
Yes.
So tell us about that. That's like the
So this
addendum or
is
something.
Yeah, it's technically called a bookazine, and this is one of those things you'll find at checkout counters at your grocery store and health food stores. And it's only out for a limited time because they circulate to the next themes. So get it while you can. It is a lot of it's based on the book, but it has a different, a little bit of different edge to it. So there's a whole section in here on sipping herbalism where I go into like teas and infusions and tisanes. And there's still like traditions and some of our favorite herbs in there. Different branding, different, layout and design, but it's really, they did a great job with it.
Heck yeah, and maybe you could get it signed if you see Mimi at the Florida Herbal Conference, the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference, and I also want to say you might be at the Good Medicine Confluence as well.
I will be. Mhm.
Sweet, awesome. Well, thanks, Mimi, for joining us on the Herbalist Hour.
All right, thanks. It was my pleasure. Had a
Awesome.
great time.
Same. We'll see you in the next episode.
Sounds
Take
good.
care.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.